Test, 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 test. Test, 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 test. Test, 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 test. Test, test. Test, 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 test. Well, Joyce is on. Look at that.
You might want to go on and tell her that
We're really good.
we haven't.
Ollie and Joyce. Well, we're in practice mode. People can, the panelists can join.
Hi. Hi.
Hi. I just like to log on early just to make sure, so I totally understand all.
Oh, okay. I was afraid.
No, I just always try to do it early just in case I have technical difficulties.
Oh, okay.
No
Well,
worries.
I'm still running back and forth and doing some stuff, Joyce. But so I have a question because I'm going to mention it during my director's report. Is the new name of the chamber Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber of Commerce from Goleta to Carpinteria?
Yeah, so the Goleta de Carpinteria is like the tagline. So
The
the real
tagline?
name is
Okay.
Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber of Commerce.
Oh,
I know,
okay.
long.
That is the world's longest name.
Yeah, it is long. We worked hard on that name though, to
Yeah,
incorporate all three entities. So
yeah. Okay, so I'm going to run off and I'm still bringing stuff into the room here. So
no worries.
I'm going
I'll
to,
just
I'll
mute.
be back in a second. And again, we're going to start at 9:45. So that's another 15 minutes.
You know, and it was weird. I thought it was 9:45, and then I got a reminder saying it started at 9:30. So I was just being safe.
Oh my gosh.
So I'll just stay on, and then I'll mute
Yeah.
and stop my video. Okay,
And
no
Tony,
worries.
thank you. I see you there, Tony. How you doing?
I'm here. Yeah, I had 9:30 on my calendar too, but 9:45.
Gosh. Okay. Well, if you need to take a quick break or something, you can do that and come back. And again, I'm going to move the SB1 presentation up on the agenda, Tony. So it's going to be right after. It's going to be the first item under new business. So,
Perfect.
we'll get you you and Dawn and Rebecca out of here as early as possible. Although you're more than welcome to stay and then you know, listen to the rest of our stuff that we're doing.
Perfect.
Okay. I think she saw me wave at her. Yeah. Yeah. Hi, Susan. Did you hear me? You can wave back again. Okay. It is at 9:45, Susan. So if you have something, you can unmute her. So if you have something that you want to do for a couple of minutes, feel free to do that. Okay. Well, that's good to know. Say something, Susan.
Now can you hear?
Yes. Now-
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
You know, this is
Come early.
this is one of the reasons that we do this early, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we gave ourselves like 15 minutes of kind of error time or whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it, to kind of make sure that the technology works, because everybody's doing these Zoom meetings, or I guess the other one is go-to meetings or something like that.
Yeah, we're on Microsoft Teams is our main platform right now, but we're looking into some other ones because our partners are all on different things, including Zoom.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I just see so many of them are Zoom. I mean, you know, I think that if everybody just went to one platform, it'd be great. But maybe this is the modern day example of VHS versus Betamax. So
Well, initially we didn't go to Zoom. Yeah, because there was some confidentiality issues, but I think they're working those out. So, and we actually have, several of us have requested to have access to Zoom. I mean, I can join anything I'm invited to, but I can't. And we did do a steps meeting where we invited people on Teams, which most of the time works, but the time that we did it, we ended up having to have another partner invite us by Zoom. And so it took an extra 20 minutes. I mean, I think
yeah.
there's lots of benefits, and sometimes conversations even are more in depth remotely, but the technology.
Yeah, brave new world. This is the new normal.
Yeah. All right, I'll run off and I'll come back.
Okay, sounds
Okay.
good.
All right. Anthony, I'm impressed with your mask. I'm at home, so I'm not wearing it, but
Yeah.
I have been.
I got right here. It was 10
Yeah,
away.
Anthony and I are in the same room, although it doesn't
Oh.
appear that way, but we're
Yeah.
actually in the same room. So
Got
that's
it.
why he puts his mask on.
Yeah. Well,
just
that's
to-
smart. Let's keep everybody healthy.
That's right.
Back.
So, Ray, this is Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca.
Do you have an idea of how you would like for us to present? I have a bit of an idea, but please tell me what
Yeah.
you need.
Actually, I sent out an email, I think it was Monday or something, but if you can't find it, it's no big deal. I'm going to do a bit of an introduction, and then I'm going to turn it over to you to do an overview of the project. And then from you, we'll go to Tony, who's here, and he just stepped away from his camera, to talk about apprenticeships in the 3 counties in general, but maybe focusing a little bit on Santa Barbara. And then Dawn and I will end the presentation. Dawn talking about the things that are going on in Santa Maria. I'm sorry, San Luis Obispo, and possible collaboration with us in the Santa Maria area, and the things that she's doing with Michael. So again, what I'm looking for from you is the overview of the project, some of the metrics.
It's a lot. I don't know that we'll get there, but we can see.
Okay. That sort of thing. So, can you see?
That's true. That's a good point. So if we have to pay that, then it's worth that we track everything. Yeah.
Okay, somebody's talking, and I'm not sure who that is because I can barely hear.
It's not me. I'm hearing it too, but it's not in my location.
Okay, I thought maybe it was somebody talking to you, so that's why.
Oh, no, sorry, no, nope. No one is here to, I am at home and no one is here to talk to me other than the cats.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe what you were going to do, you're going to tell Patricia Duffy, hey, Patricia, why don't you do this?
Patricia took a day off today.
I know. How does she get these Fridays things? My goodness. And there's Dawn. Dawn's got her bookcase there. And don't I look really intelligent here, Dawn? With all these books behind me that are fake. Hi, Chuck.
Good morning, Ray. How are you? I made my
So we're trying to. This is why we're doing it at 9:45, because we're doing all of the technology things. You know, now, we have enough of these calls to know that the technology will kill you.
Our international gave us a little prep on these type of meetings, you know, how to do the background and how to do the stuff. And
Fancy.
well, it's kind of helpful because they told you, hey, you know, try to get your eye level in your camera, like in the upper, you know, like about 2/3 of the way up to make it more comfortable for the other people in the thing. And you know, and how you can use your space bar, you know, to speak instead of having it on all the whole time.
Oh yeah, we'll do a little of that.
Yeah.
But
So
what
that's
I've noticed,
nice.
what I've noticed some folks doing, we were on one yesterday. Dawn and Rebecca were on that too. And no, actually, it was when Dawn was on with me. It was the reach thing, and I think everybody had their script like spaced just right, so that they looked as if they were looking at the camera, but I know they were reading a script. So it's where you put that, it's where you put that script that would be really interesting.
Well, that's true. Like me, I'm looking off because I'm taking notes, so I have to go to the right and take notes. And they tell you too, you know, to look where your camera is, because you know you're reading the screen. So when someone's looking at you, you're not looking at the camera. And so they say when you're not reading, you know, like this, you go look at the camera.
Yeah, I'm going to be looking down occasionally. See, I've got these papers here and that sort of stuff, so I'm going to be doing that.
Right. Well, I was on one yesterday where there was a person doing a presentation, and basically they're doing a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And I spent the first 15 minutes trying to get it to the full page, and I'm thinking, why don't you practice this before you get on? Because everyone in the call is just waiting for them to figure out how to make it work right.
I know. It's you know, it's a challenge.
We had an international meeting years ago, and there was a PowerPoint presentation done, and it was done with red and black, and you couldn't read anything.
Oh my gosh.
And it's on a projector, right in a big room on a projection. I go, why wouldn't you try this out first and see before you, I'm really big on like, let's practice this before we.
Well, we did have, if we screw it up, we're going to screw it up. But Sandra and I got together the other day, and we did do a practice. So if it's screwed up today, at least we practiced before we screwed it up.
Well, I should have saved that until after I saw what happened here. Huh?
And by the way, I've read all these books behind me, just so you know.
Yeah, they told us about that too. That was one of the backdrops they recommended to have for professional people, is books behind you. Like, so both of you both have are really nice. You know, that's what they recommend. You know me, I got to be a rebel. I can't follow that. Yeah, actually, I like the background. They have like all those homemade ones, and they have the ones that they provide, you know, with the streams and the mountains. Those are pretty nice. The San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, that's a nice one. I see a lot of people with that one.
Wow. I see some more folks are joining us again. Most of you hear me, but if you're not a presenter or a board member, you're going to be on mute. Sandra's going to go through all that in a second, but I just want to let you know up front. So if you're one of the guests, like program operators or something, you're not going to be unmuted unless there's a time in which we're actually going to ask you to do something. Actually, there's a point in the agenda that I might ask the program operators to join in. So Eric and Jeanette and you know, the folks from Goodwill, be afraid, be very afraid, you know. Hi, Thomas. Okay. So everybody should also look. I think that all of our board members are automatically unmuted, but you have to do it on your screen too. So if you haven't, so look to see if you have there you go. Thomas just did it. Thomas, say something.
Good morning, Ray. Sorry for being late. Thanks for having me.
No, you're not late. We're not starting till 9:45. So I know there's been a little bit of confusion about the actual start time, but we wanted to give ourselves this time that we're taking right now to make sure that the technology is working. And so as people are coming on, we're kind of, that's why I'm engaging you guys. You guys think I'm really, you know, just chit-chatting with you, but we're calibrating and making sure that all of you are heard, et cetera, et cetera. So, and Anthony's gonna walk by me, you're gonna see it. Boom.
I kind of learned to try to get in a little bit earlier because I like a few times that, okay, I'm going to show up about 2 or 3 minutes before the meeting actually starts, and then find out all of a sudden that my Zoom link isn't letting me in right away, and it isn't doing that. It isn't the host waiting, and I end up being a minute or two late to the meeting because that link isn't working exactly right. You know, you get an email and here's the link, but me, I get about 100 emails a day. That email, like if you send one a week ago, that's down there, you know, it's about 500 down my list.
Yeah.
I go find that email, you know, to click on.
Do you have that search feature?
Yeah, you do, but
Yeah.
it depends what you're on. But,
Type in Ray and then it'll pop up.
right. But I try to copy the stuff and save it in a Word doc on my laptop on the side on the desktop. And for an emergency, I can click on it, then I just put them away when I'm done that way.
Okay. 1 minute warning. 1 minute warning.
Yeah.
Ray, did you see the chat? Jesse Cuevas was having some difficulty getting off of mute.
Yes, he joined as an attendee. I have added him to the panelists, so he should be good to go now.
Jesse, can you say something?
I'm saying something. Good morning, Ray.
Hi, Jesse. We can hear you, but we can't see you.
I know. I'm gonna take the camera feature off. I just need to restart.
Looks like Steve Lavadino can't get off mute either, Ray.
Okay.
That might be intentional. I don't know.
No.
You put it on chat. It's
You can
rare
hear
to see you, Chuck.
Thanks, Chuck. So, there he is. Supervisor Lavadino, can you say something so we can ensure we can hear you?
God bless America.
Oh, okay. That sounds right.
Hey, so what's our morning joke, Steve? I have a Paul Rodriguez as a member, and every time I see him, I go, "Hey, dude, what's my joke?" You know. So, what's our joke this morning?
Hard to have one today, but I do need to talk to you, Chuck, about the apprentice program. I have somebody that's interested, and I don't know in COVID what you guys are doing, so we need to hook up afterwards.
Actually, we're temporarily open the office for applications. So yeah, let's get together afterwards, and I'll give you all the information.
Okay.
We are having this presentation today about apprenticeships. You do know that, right? Okay.
Yes, but mine's specific for the great IBEW program.
Oh, okay.
Ray, it's about 9:46. Do we want to wait another moment or two?
I don't know. What does it look like, Anthony, as far as number of people who are on? You have the control. As far as the board members.
We have 9 on my current count.
Who's not on?
Adrian Dodd,
Right, who else?
Glenn,
Okay, Glenn maybe is gonna be a little bit late, we knew that.
Daniel, and Carol.
Daniel and Kara are not gonna be on, so it's Glenn and Adrian that we're basically. Sandra, is Glenn and Adrian Dodd from Marion Hospital who are not with us, and you can start if you'd like.
I'm ready to go if everyone else is. Before I do the opening remarks, I'm going to do some Zoom protocols, so give me a moment as I read through those for everybody. Good morning and welcome to the July 2020 meeting of the full Board of Directors of the Santa Barbara County Workforce Development Board. I'm Sandra Dickerson, the board chair. Before we officially call the meeting to order, I want to cover our Zoom protocols. Although I'm sure as all of us have been living on Zoom for the past few months, you're probably quite familiar with it. On today's call will be the workforce board members, our county council, our executive director, and some staff. There's a few presenters also who we'll introduce later, and our program operators, our state regional advisor, and members of the public. The board members, council, executive director, and staff person managing our call, Anthony Garduno, will be the only Zoom participants not automatically put on mute. Presenters will be unmuted for their presentations. Board members are encouraged to place yourselves on mute when you're not speaking to screen out any background noises from where you're joining from. You can release mute by either using the mute button at the bottom of your screen, or you can also hold down your space bar to do a temporary unmute. Board members can raise their hand using the screen, the button at the bottom of your screen if they want to get to the attention of the chair. There will also be opportunities for the public to comment on each item presented, and you'll be asked to raise your hand using the symbol at the bottom of your screen. In addition, you can also submit questions or comments using the chat button. Those questions or comments will be read by Anthony when recognized by the chair. Finally, there will be some shared items on the main screen, primarily the agenda, so everyone's able to easily follow along. With that, then I'll also jump to our standard notice to the public before we get the board meeting started. And again, good morning. I'm Sandra Dickerson, and in my capacity of chair of the Santa Barbara Workforce Development Board, I would like to welcome you to the meeting of July 10th, 2020. As a reminder, I'd like to state that the Workforce Development Board is dedicated to supporting our community by providing a first-class workforce system for job seekers and employers alike. We have responsibility for oversight of public dollars, development of effective and efficient programs, and in partnership with the County of Santa Barbara Board of Supervisors, we assist viable businesses and industry sectors that provide self-sufficient wages to our residents. Procedurally, our meeting will be conducted as follows. Members of the public who wish to address the board should use the raise hand button in the chat box. WDB staff will then enable the talk feature for the attendee wishing to make a comment. The procedure for this meeting includes the reading of these opening remarks and continues as follows. WDB staff will take roll. Members of the public wishing to make a comment will then be given 3 minutes each for those comments. WDB staff and/or board members may present recommendations for an item to the agenda. Board members may ask questions of WDB staff and other board members. The board may take action on an agenda item. The agenda was posted at www.sbcwdb.org for your convenience. And as we said earlier, that will also be up on your shared screen. And lastly, WD board members may only discuss items listed on the agenda pursuant to the Brown Act. So with that, then we will call the board meeting to order. And if Anthony would please take roll.
All right, taking roll. Sandra Dick.
Here.
Diane Owens.
Yeah, Diane, you have to unmute yourself if you're going to say something. Still not unmuted.
You could press the space bar, Diane. Hold it down as you speak.
Press the space. Oh, there you are.
I'm here.
Okay.
Got it. Jesse Cuevas.
Morning, I'm here.
Yesenia DeCasas.
Here.
Adrian Dodd,
I'm here.
Joyce Donaldson,
Here.
Chuck Huddleston,
I'm here.
Thomas Lamika,
Thomas was there.
Here.
Steve Lamanina,
Here.
Susan Mathers,
Good morning, I'm here.
Glenn Morris,
Here.
Daniel Nielsen, Kara Williams. So 11 out of 13, we have a quorum.
Okay. Yeah, Daniel and Cara have both told me that they were not going to be able to make it. Daniel has a department heads meeting today that he couldn't get out of, and Cara had a last minute emergency related to COVID-19.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. On the reorganization to the agenda, I know we have one item that we are going to reorganize on the agenda. That is our SB1 presentation. Because of time limitations on some of those participants, we're going to move that actually above the consent agenda. Ray, was there anything else in terms of reorganization?
No, that was the only thing that I was hoping to move so that we can allow some of our presenters to move on to do other things.
Okay, great. Any other items for reorganization from anyone else? Okay. Next, we have public comment. Anthony, do we have any public comments?
We did not receive any requests for public.
Okay, great. For the board communication, what I thought would be helpful for everyone at this point, and particularly for our staff of the Workforce Development Board, to have that input from everybody, is we are all 4 months now into dealing with the COVID situation. And that's all I've primarily done for 4 months. So I thought it would be really helpful if we could go around and have board members talk about your perspective, in particular, how it may have impacted either your business or industry that you know of. And most importantly, I think out of that, what you see as maybe some possibilities of how that may affect workforces going forward. What we'll do is just kind of go around. Anthony, maybe if you want to call on each person. If you don't have anything in particular, that's fine. We can just move from there. But I think that would be easier than everyone jumping in, so we can kind of keep it in a little more organized format. So Anthony, if you want to start that, and I'll save mine for at the director's report,
Okay.
or towards at the end.
I'll just go down the order as it appears on Zoom.
Okay.
So we have Susan Matters. Do you have anything?
I was going to say that the Department of Rehab has remained open almost the full time during COVID. We've had a couple Fridays that we closed the Santa Barbara office to the public. We are doing most of our contact and interaction with consumers and employers and community partners via remote, phone, a variety of platforms, and that's gone fairly well. We are taking appointments. Our goal is to have 75% of our staff teleworking, and we're working on that, but we're moving forward with that. Anything else? We have our STEPS grant, and we'll talk about that later, I'm sure, which we are really focused on. And so it's going to be challenging for the work experience, but other than that, I think things are going fairly well. That's it.
Okay, next on the list we have Adrian Dunn. Is there anything you'd like to share?
Adrian's on mute.
Sorry, I'm trying to get off of mute as I'm talking.
Great.
You're asking about how things are going with COVID?
Yes, and anything in particular helpful to the board. in terms of looking at workforce issues?
So we have clearly been open and active during the COVID pandemic here at Marion Regional Medical Center. We have some of our workforce working from home, very select positions, very minimal positions. We pretty much all hands on deck. We have positions that are open that are getting filled right now, as good as to be expected. I think we see a little less movement of positions being filled just because of COVID. People are not necessarily willing to move to the area or to different areas at this time. But nothing necessarily for the boards, for the good of the board.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so next we have
You're on mute.
Thomas Lomika.
So I think for us at Allen Hancock College, mostly everything that we're doing course-wise, services and programs, we remain open, but of course we're virtual and remote. And I think more than anything, it's a reminder to us how important our partnerships with the Workforce Development Board, WIOA, AJCC, and all the other community organizations, how important those relationships are, that in this time that we work together and we seek out opportunities to strengthen those partnerships. Thanks.
Next we have Chuck Wilson.
Let me unmute myself. So for us, our folks are considered essential workers. And so the electricians are going to work. We did make an agreement nationally with our employer group that if anyone was caring for elderly or had young kids at home that were back from school and whatever, that they could temporarily take layoffs and they wouldn't dispute that, or if anyone became at risk. Of course, the concern is, anybody gets sick and you got 14 days of isolation. And so as far as the workers are essential, they're going to work, and we've had a couple that got it that never got tested. The doctor said they had it, but at the time they weren't testing it because they didn't have the tests. We've got some assistance from the Cal Labor Fed. They provided us with sanitizer and masks recently, so we can order that stuff up and get it to employers, and so that's been really helpful. As far as the staff at the office, our staff, I had them alternate and come into work every other day. The two ladies that man the front, and I locked the office and put a sign up saying, hey, not coming in unless you absolutely need to. Call us, we're inside. You can come in. A few weeks ago, I opened the office, but I limit to one person at a time, and they must wear a mask. And so we're trying to be very, very careful. We sanitize, we're doing extra cleaning all the time, trying to take care of everyone. And so our apprentice classes, of course, are due to start. Our LEA is Hancock, and so we're trying to manage that, like every school and across the country is trying to figure out how to do this safely. And so we're taking every precaution we can and buying masks. Of course, we interview candidates for apprenticeship, and so we've had to do some stuff remotely. Almost all our meetings are done by Zoom, like these meetings, and it works very well. You don't have to travel, and it seems to be a good thing. Now, our union meetings, because of the size of the union meetings, we haven't been able to have a union meeting during the COVID crisis. And so our members make decisions, at union meetings about expenditures and stuff. So the executive board has been making those decisions. And so they're meeting twice monthly instead of once monthly. And of course, we're communicating with our members and if there's any needs. So it's really been a big impact. In my age, I'm also in the restricted group for travel. And so I'm trying to limit my travel to the office and not interacting with other people. And we're trying to just meet everything that they're trying to do to keep everybody healthy. I am concerned about going forward, looking at the meteoric rise of cases and what's happening, and the almost insistence of some people not to wear a mask or not to social distance. I'm really concerned about where we're going to be here, this rebound from the 4th of July in a couple weeks. So I'm just trying to watch things closely and they may close the office again and lock down even tighter. So That's been a big impact, like for the rest of you, for us.
Okay, up next we have Diane Owens.
Well, I've been doing most of my work with the American Association of University Women, and of course we're doing everything virtually, so no meetings, and it's been working pretty well. In fact, it's opened up some new opportunities for us, I think. You know, I'm kind of a optimistic person, so I'm always looking at the bright side. So, you know, it's opened up some new opportunities for us. And I think it will also open up some new opportunities for the Workforce Development Board and all of us in workforce. We're just going to have to look at everything differently, the new normal kind of thing. So I've missed the youth committee and working with the contractors, and I've missed seeing all of you. But and I also am concerned about EDD. I know they've been just really slammed. So so just concerned about those things. But I think we'll eventually, I think it's going to take us a while, but eventually we'll be on the other side, I think.
All right, Jesse Cuevas.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much, Diane, for your kind words. We are slammed indeed. As an update, just quickly, we've regular unemployment insurance claims that we've processed as of today have been up to 6 million. The pandemic claim processed have reached a 1 million mark. So we are extremely slammed. And as you know, 80% of our workforce has been redirected to handle the unemployment insurance claims, with an additional 1,000 that we're seeking to hire. So EDB is currently in a hiring effort, and I'd be more than happy to share that we will be having some state workshops to facilitate a lot of the questions that people have as they're trying to enter into state civil service. Those workshops, I believe, will begin in about 2 weeks. So Ray, do you want me to send that information to?
I've already received it, and we'll send it out to the board members. Or if anyone who is not a board member also wants it, just let us know.
Right, cool, thank you. So other than that, you know, again, our focus is handling the unprecedented amount of claims that we are filing, and all hands on deck at this point. But yes, like Diane said, I do miss seeing most of the people and being part of the youth committee. Thank you.
All right, Yesenia Casas.
Hi. As most of you know, I represent home care workers that work from home. Whether, you know, elderly and disabled, whether at a nursing home or at home, are the most vulnerable all the time, but particularly during the pandemic. Of course, we saw a need for more of our workers to be out there. And at the beginning, as essential workers, as healthcare workers, we kind of got forgotten when it comes to access to PPE and other benefits that the state was providing for the pandemic. So we work very closely with the state to give access to home care workers, particularly in-home support service workers, for all of that. But as we work through these times, some of the things I would offer to this group is the need for language access when it comes to trainings. We represent a lot of immigrant communities that speak different languages, and we as a union, we have stepped in to provide trainings like infectious disease. In fact, we're having 2 today, and other like industry type trainings. And we have to do them in different languages because the folks that do this work don't always learn in English. Also, as most of us are learning the technology, I feel that there are certain communities that are being left behind. We still have, even prior to the pandemic, we were helping a lot of our workers to adapt to a new electronic system for their timesheets. And a lot of them are still doing paper. A lot of them are still not banking online, not learning, you know, not adapting to like smartphones. So as we're moving very fast with Zoom and everything, some low-wage workers, if you will, or low, that are not working with technical skills are being left behind. And I think it would be a good opportunity to provide some trainings in that area. But other than that, we just, we just been adapting as a new union, finding new ways. Our union has always had the challenge of meeting in person because everybody works on different sites. We work at home. So like everyone else, we've been finding ways to meet virtually and safely. And like I said, that presented a need for educating folks on how to use technologies.
All right, Joyce Donaldson.
Yes, good morning. Pardon me. Good morning. This is my first board meeting, so I'm happy to be here. We do have announcements to make. So since I was appointed to this board as the Carpinteria Chamber CEO, we have now merged with the Santa Barbara and the Goleta Chamber, who had recently merged a couple months before. And so we just have been in since July 1st, and we're super excited to have the 3 South Coast chambers all merged together to form the Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber of Commerce. And the tagline is from Goleta to Carpinteria. So that's one big adjustment that we've made. Ours was specifically caused by COVID. We had, 3 months ago, we had no idea that we would be even talking about a merge, and then COVID hit, and we decided that maybe we need to join the group and become stronger as one entity. So we're really excited about that. We were able to hire 1 additional staff. We've been able to merge all the staff together. I think we had 2 people laid off. We've been able to bring them back here just July 1st. And then we also have hired 1 person. So super excited about that. And as far as opportunities for Workforce Development Board, I'm going to have to wrap my brain a little bit around that, and then I can get back with you about how we can assist.
Great.
All right, next is Steve Lavanino.
Good morning. So first I'll just touch on, as an employer with 4,300 employees, good news is that even though there were declining revenues, of course, with sales tax and the TOT, we didn't lay anybody off. We're able to bank on reserves and some other revenue streams. So we are still open for business and hiring. I think the thing that I've learned, well, as you know, public health is a department inside the county. One of the things that I've learned in this whole pandemic is that although communication's key, you can communicate all you want, but if you don't have solid information, which I think has been lacking from the feds, the state, all the way down to us, it doesn't really how often you communicate if the information you have is not 100% accurate. And the problem is nobody knows what information to pass along right now. So it has been very frustrating. I don't think I've seen an issue that has divided people more so, and I understand why, because they get so frustrated. We're talking about people's livelihoods. They get very, very upset, and then people get on sides and teams, and it's tough. We've put out our RISE program, which I think has been a good resource for businesses that are continuing to strive to stay open. The county's made some concessions as far as allowing people the opportunity to move into public right of way, in case you have a restaurant that you could open up outdoors and go into a sidewalk area. So the county actually has been, I think, fairly responsive as far as trying to figure out ways to help. The problem is we're just not 100% certain of the information that we're passing out. No one's been able to determine why Santa Maria is leading in cases. I think the just common perception that I have is that we have more essential workers and we have people that live in higher density than probably elsewhere in the county. And so more people have to go to work or feel they have to go to work, and then they come home and they're in a position where they're surrounded by more family members than some of us in our households. And so you're going to have a higher instance, but it's hard when you're kind of looked to for answers when answers aren't readily available even by the experts. And you can have 5 experts in the room and get 7 different opinions. So it's been tough. And the other thing that I've noticed is just cancellation of a lot of events for folks that raise money to help the neediest in our community. So a lot of our 501c3s are struggling. And we're going to see that, I think, as more people fall out of the workforce and there's not that other safety net besides social services, it's going to be even more difficult. So very busy and learning a lot of new things, including Zoom.
Next we have Glenn Morris.
Good morning, everybody. You know, from a organizational standpoint, I think we've done fine. We've been able to keep our staff here. We're doing hybrid work where folks are remote some of the time and in the office some of the time, and that seems to be working well. From a board perspective, I think two things that I would love to see us start thinking about. One, I think the nature of a lot of our jobs in the community are going to change. The skills that people need, the ability to work remotely, to self-direct to a much greater degree. These are all new skills that we're going to need to figure out how we train people, particularly people that are in transition, and where the job they had is no longer going to exist, and how do we get them skilled to do new jobs? So that's a big one. The other one is I think I'm becoming very concerned about the rising generation, kids that are going to be coming through our school systems right now, and as the nature of education delivery changes, and just the amount of face time that they're getting with teachers, and the socialization and teamwork skills that they're maybe not getting because they're all working independently now. Somebody earlier mentioned the challenge with work experience, all of these kinds of things. I'm very concerned about how we're preparing new entrants into the workforce over the next couple of years. So those would be two areas that I would highlight for the board to be really thinking about, is how we deal with transitioning existing workforce, and then how do we prepare new upcoming workforce.
Okay, we're back to Sandra.
Good morning, everyone. Well, as an HR management firm, I've spent 4 months in the midst of this with 100+ clients throughout California. So this is all we've done day to day. But I have a couple things from takeaways from what we've been dealing with besides the day to day. The workplace has COVID exposure or symptomatic employees and stuff. But I think there's a couple longer term things that I've seen as an issue going forward, or an opportunity, as some may see it. On the one hand, I'm really fortunate, even though we're really an essential business, I've had the opportunity to have virtually all of my staff working remote. That's been incredibly effective for my staff, to the point that I'm right in the midst this month of actually closing my Bay Area office. As all of that staff, I gave the opportunity, and they all decided that they would like to continue working remotely. So I think that changes some of the dynamics going forward of what a workforce looks like. And I actually see some opportunities out of that, because instead of being limited to recruiting employees very close to a Bay Area Pleasanton office, it expands the opportunities of talent that I might have available for that. And I have a number of clients who have already started making that same decision, that it's worked very effectively. And in my case, as some of my clients' productivity has actually been up as people have been working from home. I think that that's going to be more difficult on a long-term basis to sustain that, but it is what we're seeing. What I see is one of the huge challenges right now, though, is the whole issue of childcare, daycare, schools. We are dealing with lots of situations where businesses really need their employees back, and those employees are not able to come back because they don't have daycare, childcare, schools are not open. And, of course, there's a whole flux and push of whether the schools will reopen or not. I even have an employee that I put on the extended family leave that expired at the end of June. I've needed her back in July. She has spent the entire month of June up to now trying to find daycare in the Lompoc area. There is none. She's on multiple waiting lists. So we had a shortage of this prior to COVID, and now it is much more exacerbated. So that's really an issue that I think, you know, somehow we need to try to figure out ways to solve. And I know we talked about this at one of our earlier meetings in terms of some training opportunities and trying to train more people to go into that area. But I'm seeing it firsthand, and I'm seeing it with lots and lots of our clients. And in some of the situations, we have two parents who both need to go back to work, and they are having to make the decision of which one's job is more important to the household income, and the other has to give up that job because someone has to stay home to take care of the children because there just isn't anything available. So that I think is something that there's some opportunities perhaps for us to look at going forward, how we can maybe try and help address that issue. And again, it was occurring before, but it is much more exacerbated now. And I spoke about COVID probably now about 6 weeks ago to a large group of daycare owners, preschool owners, and others. And more than half of them at that point had made the decision during COVID to close. And most of them were saying that they were unlikely to reopen under the reopening parameters because the limitations that they had were not ones that they could sustain the business on. They were better to stay closed than to try to reopen under the amount of restrictions. So I think this is something that we're going to be living with for a while that really impacts the overall workforce. Okay. I don't have a particular board chair report on top of that, other than I would like to compliment both Ray and all of our staff with the Workforce Development Board. We've continued having our executive committee meetings through this process since our last full board meeting, very effectively through Zoom. But I think, as you'll see, particularly our last report that Ray has today, the accomplishments of our staff during this COVID process, I think, have been absolutely tremendous. It doesn't seem as though there's been any lapse in the programs that we're offering and the work that we're doing. So I would just like to compliment Ray and Anthony and all the rest of our staff for the really good work that they've done in pivoting as quickly as so many of the rest of us have had to doing everything remote and in a different way. So with that, Ray, I'll turn it over to you for the director's report.
Well, thank you, Sandra. And on behalf of the staff, we do appreciate the compliment. And I join you in complimenting the team that we have here on a number of things that you'll see throughout the meeting agenda, as well as in the future, how we have in fact pivoted. We have in fact gone after additional funding and received it. We basically doubled our budget through additional funding. And the team has really been working really closely with our delivery system, our operators out of Goodwill and out of Res Care. And so again, thank you very much for that. In regards to the director's report, I just will kind of touch a few things. Since we haven't had a meeting in January, I just want to, and the COVID pandemic has struck, I just want to hit a couple items that maybe aren't covered on the agenda, which is mostly an update agenda anyway. I'm going to start off by, again, reminding the board that the email that I sent out in late June, I think it was, mentioning that Melissa Marino, who's a board member, had taken another position as the president of Skyline College in the Bay Area. So she's left Santa Barbara City College. And we will be getting another representative from Santa Barbara City College to sit on our board. I've already connected with Dr. Goswami, who's the president of the community college, and we are coming up with someone as soon as we can get them on board hopefully before the October meeting where we're doing the budget for the workforce budget. And again, Joyce talked about the combination of the 3 chambers in the South Coast. And I was joking with her earlier saying that it's now the longest name for an organization possible with the, again, it's the Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber of Commerce from Goleta to Carpinteria. That's, that's a good one. I noticed that Kristen Miller, who is the CEO, has Goleta to Carpinteria as opposed to Carpinteria to Goleta, but you know, whatever. And I want to compliment Joyce on being the COO of the new organization. She'll remain on the board with us. And I do want to, of course, remind Joyce that even though you're now representing what used to be 3 chambers, you're still only getting 1 vote. You're not getting 3 votes out of this. Moving ahead, as has been alluded to, I think possibly by Jesse Cuevas, since March when we did the shutdown of, when the governor did his shutdown order, we've actually closed our 2 one-stops except by appointment only. That's Santa Maria and Santa Barbara. Our operators have been seeing people, as I say, by appointment only. So there has been some services that have been given, as well as moving a number of things, as mentioned in other items on the agenda, online. Our operators have also created a number of really innovative and creative workshops and means to connect with our customers online so that they're not having to come into the building where we don't have proper social distancing. Speaking of which, we are in fact using the state guidelines as well as the county guidelines to see how we can in fact reopen our one-stops as we're moving forward, or the AJCCs. Of course, it requires distancing, it requires some plexiglass types of things. And so it looks to me at this point as if Santa Maria will probably come online first, and then we'll probably be bringing the Ortega Street AJCC online at a later date. I know that EDD has a work group that is already looking at protocols for their facilities, and the Ortega Street facility is a state-owned building. So it's not something that's rented, it's a state-owned building. So it's a good thing, but it's also, it does take some time for the state to actually go through their protocol. So we're trying to get our one-stops up and operating again. If I had to guess, I would say Santa Maria sometime in September, and I'm not even going to take a guess at Ortega Street down here in Santa Barbara. So, turning to training, I do want to mention that because of the COVID-19 and the shutdown order that the governor issued, those participants who have already been enrolled with us who are taking online training, as I alluded to earlier, they are able to continue to get some training and improve their skills. Those who were doing worksite related training, meaning on-the-job training or work experience where they're on the job, because those jobs and those businesses and those employers have basically cut back and shut down, they are affected more. And so there's been a big decrease in the actual on-site training, whereas the online training seems to still be going along there. So let me see, what else do I have here? Surprisingly, our enrollments are taking a little bit of a dip, but not too drastically a dip, possibly because, again, the stay-at-home executive order from the governor was issued in March, And the end of our program year is June, so a number of the people had already been brought on board. So let me see what else I have here in my notes. Nope, that would be about it. I would also remind everybody that we do in fact have a very high unemployment rate. For the most recent period, which was May, is 12.9%, which compares to 2.9% that we had a year ago. So it's up 10% over last year. For business reopenings, just as an FYI, and this only goes back to mid-June, so I'm sure the numbers have improved since then. But since mid-June, following the county's certification system, 2,645 businesses had applied for county reopening certification. And that's something that you have to have if you're going to reopen your business. So that's kind of a brief fill in the gaps from other items that are on the agenda. And I'll be talking about some of those as we move forward.
Great. Thank you very much, Ray. So before we get into the presentation, we have one old business item, which is approval of the minutes from our January 24th meeting. Those were all included in the packet. So we would just need a motion, if there's no questions or comments about that, to approve those minutes.
And move to approve.
Thank you, Chuck. And a second?
A second.
Thank you, Jesse. All in favor? I think if everyone can just raise your hand, we don't need to have everyone go through the count. Thank you very much, everyone. Any opposed? No. All right. So the minutes are approved. Thank you very much. So Ray, we're ready to move into our presentation on SB1.
Sure. Thank you very much. I'm very, very pleased to introduce this item. This is the SB1 project, and that stands for Senate Bill 1, so state funding that we have received. And this is a state general fund money which is intended to bring together workforce development boards within a specific geographical area with their local building trades council, with the intent of providing individuals who would not normally be able to access apprenticeship programs an extra boost, if you will, in the form of a pre-apprenticeship training, which we'll talk about here in a second. The state government is, by the way, committed to apprenticeship programs as one way to help lift people out of poverty, since apprenticeships and working in the trades often guarantees a very livable wage for workers. So the SB1 construction that all of you have seen, I know I drive around Santa Barbara City a lot, and you can't go 3 blocks without some construction going on, and those constructions are funded through SB1. But attached to the SB1 construction money that comes out that public works departments get and that are doing all of this road paving and other things, there was also funding put in for training, and that's the money that we're talking about here and the program that we're talking about here. So again, the groups that I mentioned, the County of Ventura, the County of SLO, and ourselves, plus our Building Trades Council, represented by Tony Skinner, represented in Ventura by Rebecca Evans, and represented in SLO by Dawn Belanger. We got together, put in an application, and we're recently, I want to say it was late May, it could have been early June, where, but Rebecca will let us know. We received funding for a project, the pre-apprenticeship project that will cover all 3 areas, and we'll talk about exactly what the individual responsibilities are. For purposes of this presentation, Rebecca's going to go first, And what she will do is give us an overview of the project design. And then Tony Skinner, who is with the Tri-County Building Trades Council, will speak about local apprenticeship opportunities, hopefully focusing on Santa Barbara, as well as how the pre-apprenticeship training that we will be doing with SB1 will connect to the existing training opportunities on apprenticeship. And then at the end, Dawn Belanger and I will talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing in the north part of the county together, hopefully, as well as I'll talk about some of the things that I'm going to attempt to do in the rest of the county so that we have a countywide ability to access this program. And so with that, in 3, 2, 1, Rebecca, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ray. Thank you for that introduction. And it really has been a pleasure to be a part of your board meeting this morning. I have not had the opportunity to attend other workforce development board meetings in other regions, only have attended ours here in Ventura County. And so it's been a real pleasure to hear your updates as we are neighboring counties. It's nice to hear what your experience has been, both from the business community and the service community up in Santa Barbara County. And in some cases, it sounds like some of your businesses statewide. So thank you for that. I am the executive director here in Ventura County. Some of you may have known my predecessor, Cheryl Moore, who was our director for about 10 years. And then there was an interim time when Melissa Livingston, our now director of the Human Services Agency, had to step in and be the interim director. But I took on this role a year and a half ago, very excited to do so after working for many years here in Ventura County on workforce development and civic engagement, as well as other human services areas. This grant funding, this SB1 program, provides us a very unique opportunity to blend both our workforce development and training needs with the needs of our job seekers for robust career pathways and better jobs. To give you a little bit of background, Senate Bill 1 was the Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017. So this was put into law now 3 years ago in 2017. And it was investing $54 billion over the course of a decade to fix roads and freeways and bridges. So this was really an investment in transportation infrastructure. And so that came out to about $5.4 billion per year being allocated. And that budget is broken down into different road repair and construction projects. There was a segment of this funding dedicated to workforce development because they estimate that for every $1 billion spent in this area, you can create about 13,000 jobs. The state of California administers this through our California Workforce Development Board, which I'm sure you are familiar with. And the California Workforce Development Board has what they call a high road construction careers program. And they're using this SB1 funding to fund grants under the umbrella of high road construction careers. High road careers at the state level, when we talk in workforce development, really also refers to career pathways that can lead a person from entry level and learning through a career where they can promote and they can maintain, sustain, but also grow their skills, their income, and their employability over time. So everyone's very invested in that high road concept of career pathways. And this one is specific to construction careers. So the Workforce Development Board announced their grants. It was at the very end of May. I believe we got the press release and then got our award notification right afterward at the very beginning of June. And we were awarded what we requested. We built a budget a little over $450,000. It was $462,506. We also have to match part of that budget, so we are leveraging dollars and we're leveraging funding that we are already spending in this area to build a bigger, more robust budget. What this will include in our area, And the reason we're all working together is in part because the state recommended and asked for proposals that would bring together regions in alignment with their building and trade councils. And in our area, we have the Tri-Counties Building and Trades Council, which Tony Skinner will speak to. And they have been running apprenticeship programs and pre-apprenticeship programs for years. For our tri-counties, it's San Luis Obispo County, Santa Barbara County, and Ventura County. So this gave us a unique opportunity to work together and put a proposal together that included our 3 county workforce boards, as well as our Tri-County Building and Trades Council. So with that award of funding, Ventura County is the lead. That was a decision on the part of our partnership and our team. I drew the short straw, so we get to be the lead. And we are the fiscal agent on this. We will receive the money from the state, and we will take care of the reporting and putting together all of the materials that we need on behalf of the entire project. Each of us is taking on a different role and responsibility in the project, and Ventura County will be then subcontracting funding from the grant to San Luis Obispo County and to Santa Barbara County, as well as to the Tri-Counties Building and Trade Council. With the contract through Tri-Counties, the funding will go towards what are called multi-craft core curriculum trainers. That's the MC3 curriculum. And so we will be contracting with them to provide specific training for individuals who have had barriers to employment and have had a difficult time entering into these training programs. We will recruit through robust outreach, get those folks into a training program, and Tri-Counties will be providing that instruction. Additionally, BTC will be contracting with a local coordinator, so we have a person with local expertise and local ties who can coordinate this activity across our 3 counties. So that's how the funding will be split up. We're very much looking forward to this. The opportunity to work regionally and to grow our work-based learning opportunities, pre-apprenticeships through apprenticeships, is a great opportunity we wanted to take advantage of. And we feel that among our workforce boards, we're in alignment with the advantages that the state workforce board saw in implementing this program. And some of those advantages they've outlined is to make sure we develop a skilled construction workforce, because that skilled construction workforce can benefit us both now during the time of SB1 projects while they're everywhere, as Ray said, but also will benefit us in the future, will benefit employers, private and public in the future, and will benefit the families, the job seekers, the workers, who are then able to sustain a better career pathway and therefore provide potentially better education and career pathway opportunities for their children, their families. One of the advantages is this will increase access to state-approved apprenticeship and building and construction trades, so opening up those pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship opportunities. And it emphasizes, again, those underrepresented and disadvantaged job seekers. And it establishes models of worker management and government collaboration that jointly plans for and addresses the future. As we said, by opening up these training opportunities, you get a better skilled workforce, you pull some people up into a better career, and you provide a workforce that is able for both public and private employers. So that's an overview of the history of both the funding, the opportunity for us in workforce, and how we're planning to roll this out in our region. If you have, I can have those questions or just turn it back over to you, Ray.
Yeah, I figure we'll go to Tony and then Dawn and I, and then we'll ask for public comment and then questions from the board as well as comments. So Tony, you're up. Thank you very much for joining us again.
Absolutely, Ray. And thanks for the outline, so I know what you wanted me to talk about. Sure. Basically, in the 3 counties, there's roughly 12 to 14 apprenticeship programs being run between the 3 counties. Santa Barbara, I think, has 3. I think San Luis Obispo has 3, and Ventura has 6. But the trades that don't have training centers in the 3 counties make provisions for apprentices in the 3 counties to get trained somewhere else down in Los Angeles. As far as how the pre-apprenticeship fits in, MC3 provides a gateway to community residents to gain access to the building trades and their registered apprenticeship programs. And this goes across all crafts. A lot of pre-apprenticeship programs in the past were 1 or 2 crafts. This gets them ready for any of the 16 affiliated crafts. As far as working with the workforce development boards, it's going to really increase our opportunity to recruit women, people of color, disadvantaged workers, and it should increase our rate of graduates, because these applicants that are coming through the pre-apprenticeship program are going to know what every craft does. I sit on the apprenticeship program down here for the IBEW in Ventura, and we usually lose 1 or 2 kids a year just because they have no idea what an electrician does. They just think you're in a building all day changing light bulbs, and all of a sudden they find themselves in a ditch in 100-degree heat digging, and they're saying, well, this is what I signed up for. They're going to know when they come out of this program. As far as the program goes, it's a 120-hour program. 84 of those hours are mandated that they have to take. And that curriculum is orientation, it's construction trade awareness, that's where they're going to find out what all the trades do, tools and material, basic math for construction, heritage of the American worker, and then there's also a diversity and sexual harassment class that they must take. The other 36 hours of electives are health and safety, blueprint reading, green construction, or financial responsibility. And when they complete it, they will get a certificate from the National Building Trades that's good across the country. They can go into any apprenticeship program in construction-wise, and that will give them a leg up. All of the curriculum is taught online. We will have, I think we decided on 1 trainer up in Santa Barbara SLO and 2 down here. And that will be a tradesperson, whether it's an active tradesperson or a retiree. And the last thing is, as far as the impact of COVID, as Chuck said before, construction was deemed an essential workforce. So we really haven't seen a slowdown. We're still training. In fact, down here in Ventura, we just took 15 apprentices in a couple of weeks ago, and they're already going to work before school even starts. And we are looking at probably taking more apprentices towards the end of the year, because we've got so much work coming up that we're not going to have enough apprentices. So, Ray, I hope I cover everything you wanted me to cover.
Yeah, that's pretty good. There'll probably be some questions from the board members, so hang around a little bit.
Sure, no problem.
I see a hand raised already, so why don't we let the supervisor jump in. Supervisor Lavanino?
Hey, thanks, Tony. So is it a free program, or is there a cost to the individual?
It's free.
Okay. And then
the only thing that costs is we'll be paying for their certificate at the end.
Okay. And then, so if I get this right, so this is a overview so that they know which trade that they might be most interested in. So this gives them a leg up in applying then for an apprenticeship, whether it's IBEW or the plumber, pipe fitters, or whoever it is.
Yes, because they're going to get some OSHA training in this. They're already going to know tools and material. If they decide to take the blueprint reading elective, they're going to have that under their belt. But the actual certificate is what's going to tell us as an apprenticeship committee that these people should be ready.
Okay. And then the last question is, so how do I get somebody that's interested in this to, I mean, where do I find it online, or how do I get them to where that they can go and access this?
We're in the developmental stage right now. That will start September 1st, we hope. And then we'll be getting press releases out. Corey Black is going to be the one who's overseeing the program, if you know Corey. He's already doing it up in San Luis Obispo with the offensive education up there. We're running an MC3 program with them. And so, yeah, it'll definitely be out there.
Awesome. Thank you. Great program.
Certainly. Thank you.
Okay, jumped ahead there a little bit, but that's okay. Dawn, are you there? Okay, so if you talk a little bit about, since you've been doing apprenticeship, or pre-apprenticeship and working with your county office of education, and I'm kind of partnering with you a little bit on this overall program, certainly in the north area of Santa Barbara County. So if you kind of explain a little bit of how the program works up there and what we're looking at doing maybe jointly in the north area, that would be great.
Sure. Good morning. I'm Dawn Belanger. I'm the Workforce Development Board Director here in San Luis Obispo. In San Luis Obispo, we have our County Office of Education has a California Apprenticeship Initiative grant. And through that grant, they had started implementation of the MC3, the Multi-Craft Core Curriculum Pre-Apprenticeship Program. Last school year, they ran a cohort through our high schools. We're partnering with the County Office of Education on this Tri-Counties grant with Santa Barbara and Ventura as well, to kind of combine efforts and what they learned in the first cohort and really expand the outreach to some of the other targeted populations that Rebecca mentioned. We are in the process, as Tony mentioned, of working with Corey Black, who's going to be the project coordinator here and help us in SLO in Santa Barbara, on starting a summer boot camp for the multi-craft core curriculum run through the County Office of Education and their apprenticeship grant, and really kind of testing out some of the outreach approaches that we're aiming to try with SB1 to target the particular folks that we're looking to bring in and diversify the recruitment and people coming into the trades. And so, you know, the trades have shared with us that they do have people interested in their training programs. We're looking to kind of diversify that workforce a little bit, and also help with the prep and the expectations, as Tony mentioned. And going through MC3, they're doing training on site at the training halls in San Luis Obispo. They'll be doing it at the IBEW training hall. So they're seeing what those apprentice programs look like. They're seeing what the work and the tools and their peers will look like, and they're getting a firsthand glimpse at what the various trades are and a little bit exposure to each of them. So they hopefully can follow a path that's of more interest to them. And then we're bringing more qualified and more committed applicants to interview with the trades. So really just trying to strengthen what's coming their way. So we're looking, outreach has started for the program in San Luis Obispo. We spoke with Ray about also looking to expand some into northern Santa Barbara. We have a lot of commute patterns with Santa Maria and the northern parts of Santa Barbara County into San Luis Obispo County. So one of the plans for SB1 is to look at doing a joint cohort, either in Santa Maria or the southern part of Santa Barbara County. So we're not duplicating those outreach efforts. So we're excited to partner with Michael Specchiarella, the director of the SLO Partners Group, which is a group that's part of the Career Pathways programs of our County Office of Education, and his knowledge and ability in doing some of this targeted outreach and kind of what he's learned in the cohorts along the way. We're trying to help address some of the needs of preparing folks for the tests that they'll need to take to get into the apprenticeship programs, and how we can coach or provide some tutoring for them so they can pass the basic math and comprehension tests that are needed to get into the various apprenticeship programs. So I think that's what you wanted me to speak to specifically, Ray, is kind of our summer session plans here. Yeah?
Right. Thank you very much, Dawn. And to kind of do a little bit of a wrap up before we go to questions, as well as to speak a little bit more about Santa Barbara. As you can see, what we're hoping to do is to do outreach to target populations that would not normally be able to get into the pre-apprenticeship or certainly the apprenticeship programs. And so I'm going to be certainly are working collaboratively with Dawn in the north part of the county, and my challenge is on the south part of the county, finding, doing the outreach as well as the training locations, working with Tony and his team for where we would actually do training for folks who are in south part of the county. So that's part of the challenge that I have moving forward. As we've all said, this is a early warning, so to speak, of the grant. We actually sit down and start our planning process in September, so that's a couple of months away. And the first participants aren't even scheduled to come on board based on the planning outline until I believe it's March, if I'm correct. So that gives us time to kind of work out some of the processes that we're looking at the same time testing some of the things that are already in existence. Dawn was talking about the connection that she has with the County Office of Education, and so that would also help inform how we can do things in other part of Santa Barbara County in moving forward too. So that's the general outline of it. Santa Barbara is also taking, Rebecca's mentioned early that we're all kind of doing certain things for the good of the order. And so one of the things that we're doing in Santa Barbara is that we've taken on the MAS and reporting piece, and we'll be working with Tony's team as well as feeding information into Rebecca's team, who actually have to do the overall reporting for the Tri-County. So there's a lot of logistics that still have to be worked out, but we're taking on a piece of the reporting. Well, we're taking on the reporting piece of the administrative and the oversight type of things. And I again do want to extend my appreciation to this team for being able to come together the way that we did, to be able to figure out how to make things work. I think if there's any problem or downside with the overall concept that the state has, is that they asked for the match. I know that the match was a problem for us, and we could have asked for a lot more money if we didn't have to also figure out ways to provide the match and that sort of thing. But this is a good start. What I think we heard, Rebecca and Dawn and myself heard yesterday when we were on a statewide call with the state, they're talking about SB1 being a continuous type of a program going on for further years than what we have now. I believe the current program that we have is scheduled to end in 2022. And so they're looking at continuous funding. So with that, I'm going to stop, and I believe what we're going to do is see if there's any public comments from the public first, then we're going to come back to the board, and Sandra's going to facilitate board members' questions as well as.
First, before we do that, Ray, it looked to me like Steve had a question.
Okay.
I was fine. We can go to public comment first if there is any. I just had a question about what Ray said. Well, I might as well throw it out there now. What was the match? How much money are we talking about?
Rebecca, you have the.
It was a one-to-one match. So anything that we asked for, we had to provide a one-to-one cash or in-kind match from the funds that are in our system. So some of that came from the Workforce Development Board, some came from match from the BTCs. And so I think we got 400 and something thousand, Rebecca, so we had to come up with a match equivalent to that.
Roughly $460,000.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, we actually ended up.
Unless there was some other match that was out there, I don't know. Maybe we can. We have some ideas. I'm willing to.
Well, the program sounds so good that I mean, if we ever get to the point where, I would definitely be able to help push something if we need it at that point. But if we found it through other means, that's good.
Okay. Well, maybe more. Okay, with that, I guess we want to see, did we have any public comments, Anthony?
No public comments.
Okay, so it's back to you, Sandra, for the board comments and questions.
Okay, so thank you very much, everybody. Any other board questions before we move? Okay.
Sandra,
Yes, Glenn.
so Ray, two questions. Again, I echo Steve. I think this is a great program that there's a clear need for in the market. I guess my two questions would be, you know, one, is there any way to accelerate that timeline and get people into training earlier than second quarter of next year? And then maybe related to that, you know, do you have dollars in the program to really market the opportunity? I'm concerned about a lot of these things. I think we rely on job seekers walking in and asking about things, or press releases as our means of communicating. And I think, you know, particularly right now, folks are so distracted with everything that's coming at them. It's going to take a very effective PR campaign to break through the noise and get people's attention and really connect people who need this opportunity, you know, and make sure we fill all the seats.
Well, I'll answer the second question first, which is, yeah, the workforce team here in Santa Barbara are certainly going to sit down and come up with a strategy for working with our operators and making known the opportunity that exists. Again, keeping in mind that we're targeting certain populations that mentioned in our grant application, so we'll be doing that. In regards to your first question about the starting early, that would have to be a joint decision. That would have to be based upon a number of things. Most importantly, probably, would be Tony's team who are providing the training and when they're actually able and available to do it. But one of the reasons that we're bringing this to this board and possibly to the other boards early is to get this sort of feedback, so that when we're sitting down and talking, we're already having regular phone conversations, although the official start date, again, for the planning is September. So some of these things we can maybe problem solve and resolve and move forward with even before September. But again, I'm only speaking as for myself. I have to talk with Rebecca and with Dawn and with Tony, because, you know, we're all kind of in this together.
Ray, if I could just say something real quick. I'd like to see it accelerated myself, because a lot of the apprenticeship programs run in accordance with the college programs as far as the school year goes. And I know, like down here, our last interview is in June to get into our apprenticeship program in that August. So the quicker we can get this up and running and get people trained, the faster we'll be able to get them into our program.
I might add to that too, what Tony said. We take year-round applications, but just like Tony said, generally we do our hiring in the summer, and because school starts in early August, and we try to get everyone that we're going to have for the year. And sometimes we get people later, but I agree with Tony. I think accelerating it, if we could, would be helpful to get those applicants in. And you know, one of the great things about it too is, I think Tony kind of talked a little bit about it, but not everybody's cut out for construction work. And so going through this, they can kind of see, okay, I'm getting up at 5 in the morning now, packing my own lunch, and I might be, you know, if it's like I can't tell you how many jobs I ate my lunch sitting on a sand pile because there was no building it. We were getting ready to put the stuff in the concrete. So it's a different lifestyle. You mean, and you got to go to school. And so I think it's, do you have the aptitude for, you know, when I'm old now, when I was young in school, we had the shop classes. I mean, we had electricity, carpentry, auto shop, and metal shop. And you had an idea, oh, wow, this is what this is about. And I'd like to go in and do that. And this is kind of, it's not to that extent, but this is a way for them to get an idea about what construction's about, and really if that's what they want to do with their career. So
just to kind of speak to the thoughts about the timing, I know that Rebecca, you actually hold the contract with the state, and so there may be some restrictions on when we can start, because and when we can start charging to the grant. And so that would be a consideration that we have to take into account, even though we hear what you're saying. And I don't know, did you have something you wanted to add on that, Rebecca, or not? Maybe it's something that you would want to ask the state about later, or maybe it's already come up.
Well, what we're working on right now is facilitating among the partners any updates that we have to our plan. A unique thing about this grant is they built in the planning phase and the implementation phase together in one grant. Sometimes what we experience with these state-funded grants is that they will issue a planning grant first so that you can do all of your planning and get everything ready, and then you put in your application for the actual funding to implement. With this one, they allowed for you to have a 6-month planning phase and then implementation. Now, the reality is, in order to write our proposal, we did a lot of the planning already. So we've built in that first quarter, but we actually have in the plan that we submitted, we built in the first quarter for planning, and then starting the training in January. We have the cohort starting in January according to our current plan. However, we'll need to have conversations with Tony and with San Luis Obispo County, who already we're leveraging the fact that there's already a program in place through an education partner. So it will be fluid. And what we want to do is make sure we can, as you said, get the most people in the program as soon as possible, but also be able to have quality instruction and a quality program and good outcomes. So balancing those two things.
I have some questions. Ray, I don't know if this is for you or for Rebecca. I know you're still in the planning stage, so you may not have these answers, but I wondered a little bit more about what your goals and your outcomes are, or are you still trying to identify that? And how many participants are you looking at serving? I also am kind of geeky and had been involved in grants and contracts, so I wondered a little bit about the match. Is it limited to public entities providing the match, or is it broader? So.
I don't know if I know the answer to that last one about the match requirement, Susan. And the other ones, maybe that's an offline conversation.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Did anybody have answers to what she was?
I can give some information. Again, this is, I caveat it with, this is what we have proposed, and we're currently
planning.
You propose, and then you plan, and then you solidify. But what we looked at was running cohorts of 25 each over a period of 7 quarters to train 175 participants, allowing for some fallout. Set a round goal of a little over 100 to actually complete a certificate and credential program. 70 people entering into full state approved apprenticeships, and a little over 70 folks moving into permanent employment. But all of the participants that go through the training will exit with greater outcomes than what they were coming in, because they will have had either exposure to a training program, or they will have learned from the experience that everyone was just speaking to, which is it helps them know what this career really involves. So if you think about the marketing funnel, if you want to attract a large number of people so that you can get down to those that will really be a good fit, and that this will be happy for them and happy for the trainer and the employer, and then the most outcomes for those that complete the program and move on into permanent employment.
That was exactly what I was looking for, because it gives me a better idea of what the scope is and who you're, what your numbers are and kind of what you're aiming for. And I understand that you're still flushing that out.
And we specifically had to offer the state estimates of how many women we will serve, how many of those who have been involved in the justice system we would serve, and those that may have been disconnected from education programs. So again, looking to serve specifically those members of our community that need the training opportunity.
Right. And I asked about the match, about if it had to be public, because if it can also be private, that just gives you more options. And I was just curious about it. It's not important, but it does change what you're able to do.
What you open up, Susan, is the thought of something that I haven't posed to my partners at all, but if we received additional money besides what we have, if we could scale it up. And we haven't had this discussion, but maybe that's something that we might want to think.
Yeah, so that's the only reason I asked. So
that's why I figured you were going with it, but
okay. Thank you.
It's not a conversation.
Yeah, and Ray, if I could jump a little in on the outreach piece as well, and the goals of performance. So while we are aiming to serve a certain number of people, we have an estimated amount that we want to complete the pre-apprenticeship, the amount that will enter into apprenticeship programs. And then I think we're really going to be looking to our AJCC and our youth program systems for those folks who completed the pre-apprenticeship and did not get into an apprenticeship program. How do we enroll them into our WIOA programs? There is an opportunity for co-enrollment as needs arise. And so we should work with the momentum of those individuals completing a training, gaining some skills, and where we can help them continue either on that training path or find an occupation that maybe is outside of the trades and outside of the scope of this grant. But I do see that it's the responsibility of our system to serve and continue to serve all of the folks that we reach out to and engage in this, because we know all of them won't go into the apprenticeship programs. And so that's where I think we look to our AJCCs and our systems there to help with continuing those folks getting into some permanent employment placement. And then those that learn that the trades are not for them, how do we take that learning opportunity and look at their interests and their skills and match them to a job that might be a better fit? So we are, cognizant of that and don't want this kind of falling off the cliff of individuals who are left behind who don't get into the apprenticeship programs. I think that's where we look to our local systems to serve those. On the outreach piece, one of the things I'm really excited about is to bring that expertise of our County Office of Education. They've run several apprenticeship programs through California Apprenticeship Initiative grants here. They've done an IT program, a manufacturing apprenticeship, and they're kicking off an early childhood teaching credential apprenticeship program. Their team has been very skilled at doing some pretty fancy, in my opinion, online marketing, targeting particularly the disadvantaged youth population that we'll be looking at, and also looking at when we place an ad, online or do outreach on Facebook or Instagram or social media, we can look on the back end of that data and see who's clicking on it, where are they from. It's pretty wild if you're not familiar how much information is out there about all of us as users of social media. And we learn from that, and that's one of the things we are going to look at from the cohort we're preparing for in San Luis Obispo this summer, as we target some of the particular populations being disadvantaged youth, women, and individuals who have been engaged in the justice system. Where do we find them? How do we outreach specifically to them? So while we'll be coming to our job centers and our board members to spread the word broadly, I think a nice part of this is that we're going to be doing some really targeted online marketing and learning from the data of that, how we can better predict that. So you can put an ad on a YouTube channel or on Facebook specific to a certain zip code if you're trying to advertise to a particular community in your county, and then learn, what are some of the demographics of those individuals, clicking on that and follow up on those. So I think that's an exciting move, at least, for our workforce systems that maybe don't get into some of that. We've got the opportunity to work with our partners in County Office of Ed here who've gained some great expertise in doing that targeted outreach.
Right, and I want to, emphasize what Dawn just said. At the beginning of the project when we were developing it, she and I did talk about how the AJCCs could continue to provide support for those participants who did not get into an actual apprenticeship. So that was something that we were thinking about from the very beginning. And again, I definitely want to see some of the outreach that your County Office of Education has been doing, and that's why I want to build on that for the rest of my county. So, Sandra?
All right, thank you very much, everyone. That was actually a really informative presentation and discussion, so I really appreciate that.
We will keep the board's obviously informed as we're moving forward all along the way, and I'm not sure what kind of reporting we might decide that we want to do, just sort of a blanket report that would go to all three boards, letting the boards know where we are on the project, since it is tri-county type of thing. So.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ray.
I want to again thank all of you for coming and supporting us at this board meeting today. And Rebecca, again, I want to thank you for stepping forward, raising your hand, saying you wanted to be the lead. I'm joking, she didn't, but but thanks.
I followed the guidance of my esteemed board member.
I think Tony had a role in that.
Tony? Is that Tony? Yeah. Okay, and this is something I know that we here in Santa Barbara have wanted to really kind of engage in more. We've had a couple of other presentations. I know Chuck has helped facilitate some of the presentations that we've had in even the previous board about apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeship training. And so we're finally getting the extra money that we can actually start to do something like this, because with our small allocation, we just couldn't do it. But now it looks like we have the opportunity to do something special here. So I'm really, really excited.
Okay, well, thank you very
Thanks,
much. Ray. Okay, we are moving back to our consent agenda. Everyone's had an opportunity to review that. One, if there is an item that someone wants to discuss more fully, we need to pull that out of the agenda. Otherwise, we would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
And Chair, this is Paul. Before we do that,
Yes.
we would like to take public comment on any of these.
Okay. Anthony, do we have any public comments that are being?
I will check for a minute.
He's looking.
No public comment request for receipt.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Sandra, with that, I'll move the approval of the consent agenda.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Again, just raise your hand if all approved. And any no's?
So like the Roman Colosseum.
I know. Well, the ways we adapt on Zoom. Okay, so with that, our consent agenda is approved. Thank you very much, everyone. So Ray, and one, I'll remind you, it's about 11:14 at this point. So we have 3 more items. Ray, if you want to move into the overview of our next budget.
Yeah, and again, it's a very well written and detailed item, budget overview. Now, normally what we do, as you recall, is that in October, and it will be true of this October, is when we bring you the new budget to be approved. It's after the County Board of Supervisors has approved the budget. It's after we've gotten our final fine-tuning of the budget from numbers from the state, which it happens over the summer. So we bring it to you in October, and generally we start off that presentation in October with sort of a summary about what happened the previous year. Because this is an unusual year with COVID-19, we thought it would just be nice to kind of let you know where our budget is up front, that for the program year that just ended June 30th, which was what, 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago. So we wanted to give you a sense of what the budget was looking like, what the impacts of COVID-19 was. And so that's what that item is all about. The takeaways, the things to remember is, number one, is that we contract out with our operators. And what we do is we have a year-to-year contract with them, or a budget with them. So we've got a 3-year contract with the operators, but each year has a budget amount. So for the amount that of each year that they don't spend, it comes back to us. So what they don't spend or obligate in a particular year returns to us for us to add into our budget presentation going forward for the next year. So that's essentially what this item identifies, at least preliminarily. I don't want to say it's the final number, but it's looking like, again, because of some of the things that we talked about earlier with the on-site training not happening because of the shutdowns, some of the training expenditures and some of the other expenditures not actually occurring, some of the things that we had planned to do. So it looks as if we're going to be carrying forward across all of the funding streams $2 million. So that's going to be an additional $2 million that's going to be put into the budget year that we're in now that will be presented to your board in October. That's the main takeaway from that item. The charts and the rest of it are supporting and showing you where the money came from, what funding streams they were in, et cetera, et cetera. And if you have questions about any of those, I can probably speak to those. Our budget is done by the county social services department, so hopefully I can have all the answers. But again, the main purpose of this item today is just to let you know that we did have probably more than, certainly more than expected carry forward into the current year from last year. And the total amount is $2,100,000. So with that.
Does anyone have any questions? And one, thank you, Ray, because I think the agenda item you prepared for us on that one was particularly detailed and informative. So I think it kind of laid everything out. But does anyone have any questions on that item?
That item was prepared, just while you're thinking, that item was prepared by the Deputy Director, Linda Hillman, working with the social services fiscal staff. So I want to give Linda credit for having done that wonderful work on that particular item.
Okay. Then our new COVID activities, Ray.
Yeah, again, we've alluded to it, and it's sort of the purpose of what the board did at the very beginning of the meeting, where we went around the room and we talked about impacts and things that have happened. You know, none of us in our wildest dreams could have imagined that we were going to have this pandemic and everything else that's happened. But we've kind of risen to the occasion, and I kind of wanted to outline some of the things that we've done here as a result. And the first one, of course, is that we participated with the county's COVID-19 business team. That's headed up by Assistant County Executive Officer Nancy Anderson, and our business services staff person works very closely with that team, continuous basis, and there's a little bit of overlap, some of the things that our rapid response and business closures have been overlapping a little bit there, but that's been a good relationship, and I wanted to point that out because I thought that was something that also helped the workforce board and our system show a little bit of value in the community, into the business community. There's a number of calls that happen that we participate in because of our relationship with the COVID-19 business team that are put on by, again, the Santa Barbara long name chamber, as well as the REACH group out of San Luis Obispo County that helped our county plan the reopening strategy that of course we all are a part of and are supporting, with the workforce aspect going to be more and more prominent over the coming months. So again, that was one thing that we did. The second thing that we're going to be instituting here very soon is the Human Resources Business Service Hotline. And it's one of those things that we looked at because other boards were doing it, a couple of other boards were doing it, and as you alluded to, Sandra, earlier, because of these unprecedented times, people are and organizations are coming up with new things and new ways of doing things, new products actually. And so the California Employers Association is one who came up with this product, and it's sort of an online HR for small businesses. Most small businesses really suffer by not having a good relationship with HR, and I know that they can go ahead and their organizations like yours that provide HR to folks. But there's also maybe just a need for a quick question here, a quick answer there. And so the California Employers Association has set up this hotline. And so we're going to be participating in it and making that available to the business community to be on from a hot button on our website, and people will be able to go and receive certain services and including if need be some one-on-one counseling, but it's not a long-term effect type of thing. And so that's one thing. And then the last thing that we're doing is that we're collaborating with Hancock College on a tool that they already have, which is a job speaker platform, which is a quick match for employers and job seekers. Now we have a very good system in CalJobs that we use where we have longer term relationships with employers as well as with job seekers getting matched on the CalJobs system. But given these difficult and different times, we thought that it might be good to have a very simple self-service type of job board. And so that's what we're moving forward with, working with, again, Thomas and the folks out at Hancock College to actually provide that sort of a platform. And it would be a place for employers who have a quick job that they need filled like immediately to actually go to, and somebody just to jump on it and see and connect. So I want to stop here because this board item is one about things that we've been doing in response to the COVID-19 and some of our changes and things that we've been doing specifically because of the conditions of our 2 one-stops being on appointment only and that sort of thing. I alluded earlier to the fact that our operators are actually putting together some online courses and strategies. And so I did want to stop and see if either Eric or the team from Goodwill or Jeanette, I'm not sure who's on, I'm looking at the screen, but I can't see who's on from our operators. If you wanted to take a minute and talk about, so just raise your hand and Anthony will recognize you, and take a minute and talk about some of the things that you're doing as a result of the COVID-19, because I wanted the board to have a sense of some of the additional steps that we've taken. So is anybody raising? No one's raising their hand. Glenn's raising his hand. Oh, okay.
Well, so Ray, I wanted to get a little more clarity again around, and I know we talked about this earlier, but the helpline that the California Workforce Group's doing.
Yeah.
Who's actually manning the phones, providing that advice? You know, when I hear stuff like, you know, this is just for the quick and easy answers, that makes me really nervous, because I'm sure Sandra would tell you there is no easy answer in an HR scenario. The implications, if they get it wrong, are just catastrophic. So can you reassure us that these are really trained?
Yeah, it's the California Employers Association. They are a statewide group. They used to sit, and they possibly still do sit on the California Workforce Association board. They're as an associate member. They have a number of experts that they use to provide ongoing services on a regular basis, and they've been doing this for years, to the employer community. I've seen and taken some of their webinars, of course, back in the days of webinars and sometimes with conference calls, and they've all been with experts. And the California Employers Association assumes the liability for any of that advice. I know when you're talking about some bad advice that somebody takes, and then they come back and they say, you guys gave us some bad advice. Well, the association assumes responsibility for that advice. And again, this is one of those things that we're just looking to try out and say, well, maybe this.
And just to be clear, if we're going to be a member of that network and refer people to that, I'm guessing you have some sort of an agreement, and it protects us on the liability side.
Yes, that's what's being worked out now. And again, a lot of the boards have, several boards have already done it, but I know a lot of boards are also exploring it. It's one of those hot items that's talked about all the time when the workforce directors get together. So I did want to assure you that it wasn't just some fly-by-night group.
Yeah, and if I may add to that, they have been around for a long time. I agree with that. I certainly agree. I think that it is a good decision on our board to try to provide something right now, because the reality is, in the COVID environment, I mean, HR is a world unto itself, certainly on a regular basis, but in this environment right now, it is almost impossible for the average business owner to figure out what to do in a lot of the different scenarios that are coming up. My HR team literally spend every morning looking at what changed today, because the guidance that was issued 3 months ago in March and early April is very different in some areas than it is today. And so it is extremely difficult to deal with a lot of this. And I know, because we are fielding these kinds of calls all day long. And no business owner out there is comfortable, even as much guidance as we've given, and we give a lot of resources, they're not comfortable making these decisions on their own. They want some input. And I am sure that what CEA is most likely doing is giving those, caveats when they give the advice, that this is the best advice we can give you as of today. And nothing's foolproof. Someone can always try to, sue you whether they have a foundation for that or not. But I do think that it's a good step that our board is doing something on a proactive basis to try and help businesses through this. As Ray noted, that many of them don't have a professional HR team that can really kind of help guide them through this whole COVID time. And we're in these days for a number of months to come yet. This is not going away anytime soon. So I think it does, reflect well on our board and being able to step up and provide something like this. So.
Yeah. This whole COVID thing, as we've all said here today, and has provided a number of things that we didn't know, or pointed out a number of gaps in services. There's a group called Cameo who I know, they promote self-employment and entrepreneurship. And now they are providing a lot of advice. And we're not referring anybody to them for this, because we don't know what kind of advice and who's providing the advice. But they're providing advice to people like Uber drivers who have lost their income because of the COVID-19. And so there's just lots of people trying to fill gaps. And so one of the things that we're looking to do is to, if there are organizations that we have respect for, or that we have good knowledge of and know that what their standards are, we're likely to go along or at least to refer people or to let people know that they exist and what they're offering. But if we don't know who the organization is, we're being very, very determined not to pass anybody on to them. I think that Eric Walker from ResCare does have something that he wants to add, and then we'll come back to this discussion if you want. But Eric?
All right, we're going to recognize Eric Walker from ResCare.
You're on.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I wanted to the points you were talking about, what we're doing now and providing service. We are doing virtual orientations and workshops to individuals. As far as, I wanted to get back to those numbers, Ray. I didn't get a chance to talk to you earlier, but we actually have met our adult and DW enrollments in Santa Barbara and Santa Maria.
That's right.
But we're basically doing.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Ray.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. But we're doing a lot of our things virtually, and individuals will come in if they can't do virtual services. But we practice social distance, and we have we do sanitizing with those individuals, sanitizing the center. I'm sorry, once they leave the appointment.
Okay. Yeah, I know that's it's a major issue out there for folks in reopening, is how to continuously keep your areas clean. And so we've been, that's a major hurdle that we have.
I forgot to mention one thing. We are using Scan now, which is like DocuSign. So individuals that need to turn in paperwork, they have access to a computer. We'll send them their documents through Scan now, and they can send it back to us.
Yeah, because the state made some changes in regards to the type of signatures that you had to have on certain of our enrollment documents, and now can be electronic signatures, I believe.
Yes.
Okay.
We also have Jeanette Dunn from Register would like to.
Hi. So if Eric's through, are you through, Eric? We can
yes.
Go. Okay, we'll go to Jeanette now. Thank you very much for your input on that, Eric. Again, I wanted to provide the opportunity for you folks who are delivering the services to kind of provide the board with your perspective and view on what we're doing during these crisis times. So Jeanette, go ahead. Are you there? Is Jeanette on? Jeanette should be able to speak. Or not. Going once, going twice. No.
Hi, can you hear me now?
We're getting an echo.
Yeah, I'm having a problem on my computer, so I'll just send you an email.
You're going to have to turn something off. Jeanette? Uh-oh. Okay, well.
Anthony, I think you need to remute Jeanette if she hasn't remuted, because otherwise we're all going to get that echo.
Yeah.
That usually happens when you've got two communication modes up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, if there's nothing else on that one, Ray, where you go to our last item, our grant funding.
Looks like she rebooted or she came back on. Just trying to.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Oh,
Can
that's
you hear me
better.
okay now?
Yes.
You are.
Yeah, sorry about that. Technology, right? And I've done about 1 million Zoom meetings. I can't seem to get them right. I did want to just speak a little bit and very shortly about what we're doing as a company for COVID-19. So our parent company is Bright Spring Health, and it is a healthcare company all across the nation. And they are guiding all of our COVID-19 response efforts, not only for our staff, but for all of our centers, and following not only CDC guidelines, but the Bright Spring Health guidelines too. So a big part of our company is, we're responsible for the most vulnerable children and adults in healthcare settings. So we have weekly meetings on COVID-19 to give the weekly updates. It was mentioned before, every single day there is actually a change. And so we do get an update and change notices every single day. So I did want to mention that. The other thing is our company did source a lot of the PPE type, disposable masks, reusable masks, sanitizing, hand sanitizer, wall sanitizers, gloves, thermometers, all those kinds of things. And we have them in stock. We do see an increase right now. So I did want to mention that too, across all of my California projects and across the nation. So as businesses opened up and there was more movement, we are seeing an increase in possible exposures and actual exposures right now. So I wanted to share that. There were, from March to about 3 weeks ago, we were doing really, really well with actually hardly any. And now in the last 2 weeks, we've seen increases. So we are keeping a watchful eye on all of that. And that's the piece that I wanted to share.
Okay. Sounds like the 4th of July effect that everybody's talking about. It's 2 weeks ago is when it happened.
We also have a COVID-19 resource toolbox that we share with anybody and everybody. So boards, partners, a lot of it would be duplicative to what other folks already have, but I think that the more we share our resources during this time, the better too. So if anybody would like access to our COVID-19 resource toolbox, and just get a hold of Eric and he'd be happy to share that with you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jeanette. All right.
Okay.
The next item, I'll have Osvaldo Sotelo from Goodwill would like to address the board.
Okay. Osvaldo, are you there? Okay. For the board's purposes, Osvaldo is from Goodwill. Where are you? No? Yes?
Hello, Ray, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Yeah, so just quick update on the YCS program, Youth Career Services Program. So we are trying our best to deliver services to our youth, specifically during these tough times. We're following all the right protocols and procedures from state and county. We have set up Zoom meetings. We have our Tuesday orientation meetings every Tuesday at 4 p.m. All of our services are via Zoom with the exception of those youth that don't have access to either a Wi-Fi, a computer. It might be a little difficult for them to use a computer. We do have one-on-one meetings with our youth. And obviously, following the procedures, we have everything set up in our office as far as wearing a mask, sanitations, all that good stuff. If a youth does not have a mask, for X reason, we have extra masks for them. We don't, basically, we try to deliver services to our full potential. So that was working. I know at the beginning, it took a little toll with youth being adjusted to the change of going Zoom. And I think it was with everyone. But that seems to be going very well, actually. Okay. So that's a quick little update on the COVID-19.
Okay, thank you very much.
That looks like that's everybody.
That's it. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Anthony. So Ray, I think we're on to our grant funding item.
Yeah, I wanted to provide this item to the board. It's really good news, but it's also kind of a how do we move forward type of thing given the pandemic. But I still wanted to share it. I'll point out that a lot of the grants that are mentioned on this memo were applied for probably back in October of last year, December, and then we got the funding, and then we got hit with the pandemic. But some of it is focusing towards providing services to the workforce that's out there that's no longer working, whose jobs have gone away. So the first group that says COVID-19 grants, I'm going to hit some highlights here. The first one is a federally funded grant that we're part of with the state of California. The state actually received something like $20 million. They'd asked for $80 million, and they received $20 million, and our share of it is $500,000. And what we're doing is fairly unique. We're working with Eddie Taylor and the United Way folks out of Santa Maria, and Eddie's doing some county-wide activities, public service type of activities. And so he's got one group of these participants that's going to be funded with this money. We'll be providing a number of public service activities throughout the county. But the larger group, about 33 participants who are going to be actually working and helping out in the food banks. And that's something that the state has actually encouraged us to do. And so Glenn helped us connect with some of the food banks here in Santa Barbara County. And so we made that connection. And so the food banks, for those of you who don't know that, had been working with the National Guard, had been providing a number of services. But the National Guard at the end of, I believe, July are going to be pulling out of providing those services. And so our participants are going to be doing a lot to replace those folks at the food banks. And so that's a good humanitarian service that is approved and allowable by the federal government, specifically because of the COVID-19 activities. The second grant there, and I'll take questions at the end after I go through all of these. The second one is the one that's sort of a grant that we had actually applied for before COVID hit, and this one has to do with, I believe it was the one that had to do with Sears, when Sears actually closed up in Santa Maria. So we started off with the funding, asking for it for that reason, and then when COVID hit, we expanded it to be for all COVID-19 individuals. So the state was very gracious in letting us do that, and this is part of the state set-aside money. So the first money that I spoke about came to the state from DOL for COVID-19. The second amount of money that I'm speaking to now is actually state money that they've actually sent over to us for this purpose to help out. The third amount of money there is one that has to be spent fairly quickly by September, and it's additional supportive services. Now, during the conversations earlier today, there was a couple of mentionings about people who don't have the ability to connect and get things online. Well, that's exactly what this money is for. It's for our participants who don't have like smartphones or a laptop or a hotspot to actually get that sort of equipment so that they can, in fact, continue to participate in the program, continue to benefit by the training that's available now online rather than face-to-face. And so that has a timeline because workforce money has certain timelines attached to it, and the money that this project is funded from has a much shorter timeline, so it has to be spent by September because October 1 is the new fiscal year on the federal side, and the money goes away at that point. So that's what they're doing there. Then the last 5 grants were not COVID specific, but they were grants that we applied for and were successful in receiving money on. And you may have heard of them. I think I've sent out some things. Certainly the Veterans Grant was one thing that we built upon. The Veteran Stand Down that Supervisor Lavanino has been supporting, and the idea that we want to serve veterans and we want to support veterans throughout the entire county. And so that was the basis of applying for and receiving this grant. And so we're trying, under the current conditions, we're going to be moving forward, trying to get that grant off the ground very soon. We have an advisory committee that that's going to be working with us on this grant. The supervisor, as well as Kathy Siemens from the Santa Barbara Foundation, is also going to be helping us on this advisory group. Staff will be reaching out to the advisory group within a matter of next week or so to set up their first organizing call. The second one is the summer youth employment that I believe Susan alluded to earlier, which is the STEPS program. We've applied for that and got funded this year to provide youth with disabilities summer jobs. Of course, with the job picture being what it is, it's a challenge, and that's what Susan was alluding to earlier. So we're going to be challenged on finding the job, but we're determined to do it. We've got the operations ready to go forward in the start. So we're seeing what's happening. The third one is the item that we just had the presentation on, so I won't talk about that anymore. The prison to employment, you've heard me talk about that before. We're at the point where we're about to launch that grant and that activity. One of the changes that we've made is that we decided to collaborate even closer with the County Department of Probation, with Tanya Heitman and Kim Sheen, who's the deputy over there. And so we're going to be serving a number of participants that they have who are in subsidized housing, and this is going to be helping them get employment so that they can get out of the subsidized housing and get their lives back on track. And so we're very, very excited about that moving forward. That's also a larger collaboration with San Luis County, Monterey, and Santa Barbara County, and our chunk of the pie is $337,000. And last but not least is something that we're doing in support of community-based organization. Community-based organizations, there's a state Assembly Bill 1111, and that's special funding to allow community-based organizations that normally have not had access to the state dollars or workforce dollars to participate in workforce programs. And so we were lucky here in Santa Barbara County, and that a group called Transitions Mental Health Association that actually operates a little bit in St. Louis County too. They were funded to do a program called Growing Grounds, which the county has initially funded. And so by getting the state funding that I encourage them to apply for, the county funding that we were putting up will not be requested anymore by them. And we are supporting them to the tune of supporting them with their reporting and MIS activities in partnership with Goodwill. The actual grant amount that Transitions got is over $500,000. The $117,000 that you see listed there is what we're going to be receiving to provide services to that particular project. So it's out of that amount, the $500,000 we're getting to $117,000. So there's lots of grant activity that's starting to happen. My guess is that because of COVID and California being California, there's going to be a lot more coming down as it relates to workforce development activities. There's lots of talk about transitional jobs as opposed to on-the-job training or work experience. Is transitional jobs are kind of jobs. It's not a job that you're expected to get hired at the end of your participation in at that particular employer. So it's a short-term job. You do get to work, you do get paid, but it's not the longer-term workforce type of jobs that or training that we normally get people in, which lead to career objectives, et cetera, et cetera. So there looks like there's going to be funding coming down for more transitional jobs or transition jobs, and so we're keeping our eye out for that. We're going to be looking on ways to implement all of these grant programs here over the next several months. It's going to be part of your budget approval process that's coming up in October. I may be reaching out to others of you for ideas and for collaborations on certain things. It's been very, very helpful. I again appreciate the work that Glenn did in getting us in touch with the food banks, the work that Supervisor Lavanino's doing in helping us with our veterans program and others. So I'll stop there, and as you can tell, I'm losing my voice.
Ray, just a question, because as you noted at the beginning of the board meeting today, this is effectively about a doubling of our grant and other revenue. So how do you see that impacting our Workforce Development Board staff and the ability to manage all of these different programs now?
Well, we have brought on someone who had been working with us in the past, and he was on loan to us. His name is Peter Sotelo. And so Peter is back with us, and so we've asked to make him permanent. That's one thing. And then we're also looking at bringing on an extra help person to help us with some of the MIS and reporting activities. But those are the only two things that I think we need at this point in time. We want to go slow with it. We don't want to bring on a lot of new staff, obviously, because this is grant money. And so grant money goes away. And so that's why we went to the limited term person or the extra help person for the reporting aspect. And we think that even as we're moving forward and because of the longer range COVID-19 activities, that we'll still be able to support Peter as we go forward.
Great, okay. Any other questions from anyone? I just want to compliment Ray and the staff again, because as you see, this is, pretty significant amount of additional funding that they've been able to bring in a lot of different areas, pretty diverse, that I think is really significant in terms of what can be accomplished with these additional funds. And to be able to do it with maybe 1 to 2 additional staff, I think is also pretty impressive. So thank you to Ray and the staff for those accomplishments.
Yeah, again, I want to thank the team. They did a great job in putting together these applications. They're getting really, really good at this. Maybe what I'll do is hire them out to other people that put together grant applications.
We want them doing our grants. Okay. And with that, we don't have any other agenda items. Is there anything else that anyone wants to bring up before we wrap up today? We do have our next meeting is on October 9th. I'm not as optimistic as everybody else. I think we're still going to be on Zoom probably in October versus getting this size of group together by that amount of time. So we will be planning on another Zoom call. In the meantime, let's all hope that our county numbers start going in the opposite direction versus the daily news that we are getting, which is not real positive at this point. So hopefully we can get that under control here fairly soon. So any final comments or questions from anyone? I don't see any. Steve?
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Everybody stay safe and well.
Absolutely. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the good work. Thank you.
So we left the meeting yet? I won't say anything until then.